Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Yap Huan, and I'm with the NUS Library's Special Collections. And it is my great pleasure indeed this morning to welcome all of you to this talk by Dr. Jusoh. The talk is part of the Biodiversity Seminar Series organized by the NUS Library. And we've been doing this for a number of years now. And just a heads up, please watch out for next semester's slate of speakers, including a herpetologist, something that I learned today, an expert on amphibians. At the end of the talk, we will flash a QR code to get your feedback. Please help us by scanning the code and giving us your feedback. And it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our moderator for this morning's, Dr. Anthony Medrano. Dr. Medrano is a great supporter of NUS Libraries and of Special Collections, and he is the NUS Presidential Young Professor of Environmental Studies at Yale NUS College, as well as a member of the NUS Department of History. He's also a research affiliate at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum here at NUS, and research associate at the Asia Research Institute. And he's the principal investigator of the MOE-funded project entitled Linking the Digital Humanities to Biodiversity History in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Anthony, I pass the time to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tim. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us today. I really love this series. We get to listen to lots of different kinds of speakers and their specialty and specializations. It's a fantastic sort of opportunity for me to really learn quite a lot. And I've been quite fortunate to learn from friends. And so today I've got the great luck and good fortune to introduce one of my friends, Dr. Juan Yusra. Dr. Juan is a senior lecturer in biodiversity and conservation at Monash University, Malaysia. She's been studying fireflies for nearly 2 decades, and she's presently serves as the co-chair of the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Fireflies Specialist Group. So this is a group I think that is keen on trying to determine or assess whether or not a particular species is endangered or threatened, or perhaps even near extinction, and then what strategies might need to be put into place to protect those very critical species. So it's a really, really important specialist group, and Dr. Juan is the co-chair of that. Prior to joining Monash University, Malaysia, Dr. Juan was a research fellow at NUS, where she worked on a number of natural history projects at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum, as well as, and I think this is even more importantly personally, as well as sharing her passion and enthusiasm for science, biodiversity, fireflies, natural history, and Singapore with my students in my classes. I've been very lucky to have her come into my class and just sort of scream with enthusiasm and get kids interested in like fireflies and, you know, you can do anything you want kind of attitude. So it's really a joy to have her share with us today her passion and her interest in fireflies. And specifically the title of her talk today is Luciola singapura and the Fascinating World of Fireflies, which is a historic talk as well, because there's a wonderful bit of history in this. So over to you, Juan, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I think I can now continue to share my screen. All right. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. I'm actually quite excited to see a lot of people that I think I know, like quite familiar. Thank you everyone for joining this morning talk. And I really don't know what I want, because so much thing I want to share. I think Anthony knows me very well, like a lot of things, a lot of stories I wanted to share. So sometimes I was just like, oh, which part of story that I should share? And I feel like, you know what, stick to the main thing, which is, you know, always stick to the basic first. So what we're gonna do to, what I'm going to talk to today, this morning, is mostly about everything about like the awesome thing, the fascinating thing about fireflies. But of course, because, you know, NUS, and also because recent discovery of new species, Luciola singapura. So I think maybe a bit more about this species that people really don't know the, like, you know, behind the scene. But not so much about that, but it's more like, you know, there are other stories, not just the species itself, but it's other stories that accompany with the specimen, with the journey of discovery. So that is something that I would like to talk about, and especially to inspire people to actually get to know more about fireflies. You cannot just come and listen to my talk, but I'm hoping that after this talk, you will just go out and find fireflies and ask this question. You know, go out and then, you know, talk about it. And then maybe if you're in Malaysia or in Singapore right now, I know there are friends from Malaysia here. Thank you for joining me. And also I see my mentor, Dr. Leslie Valentine from Australia. Thank you, Dr. Leslie. You are here. And you will see, because Dr. Leslie is also part of Luciola singapura, Jusoh, and Valentine. That's two of us actually describe the species together with other fellow researchers from NParks. So yeah, let's talk about the story. So it's not going to be scientific. I think I try to be more like helpful in terms of providing the insight, providing the facts, you know, fascinating facts, and what can we learn today. All right, and before that, thank you so much, NUS Libraries, for inviting me for this talk. And I think this is a good way to share my passion with everyone after I left Singapore and NUS. It's good to be back to my home country in Malaysia, and it's good I still can actually talk about fireflies with all of you. You know, this is like no border. All right, so let's start with something like frequently asked questions. So I think I think I'm never tired of people ask me the same question again and again, because I think there are always new people interested in fireflies and they want to know about the basic things. Then I will choose stories. Yeah, there are stories about fireflies. I call it mysterious, extirpated, and hope. Probably the second one should have a better name, but you will know why I call it extirpated and then hope after that. And then a bit more to emphasize about threats, and also to let everyone knows about how to help. You know, once we know about threats, once you get to know more about fireflies. Right, let's start with the frequently asked questions. Usually people ask about fireflies. Okay, fireflies is quite general name, but in the US, some part of US, you call it lightning bug. But in Malaysia, we call it kunang-kunang, Malay word, kunang-kunang, kelip-kelip. You can also call some parts called glowworm, and a lot of different kind of name all over the world. If you talk about common names, they are just everything like, but it's always about something to do with the lights, right? But first basic thing is fireflies are not flies. Come on, remember that. Fireflies are not flies. Yes, this is the problem with the name, common name. Fireflies, they don't even with fire, right? So there's always about things. The simple thing to know is they have this kind of let me go back again, sorry. There will be like head, big head. That's how we try to say that. It always have big head, and then the pronotum, and usually the pronotum, this part actually covered the eyes, so you won't see them much. But being a beetle, they have the elytra. That's the hardened wing, and then you see actually underneath there's another soft wing, which is the hind wing that we call it. And but the most important part about firefly is always about the light organ. So you have to flip the abdomen. So you have to flip the body, and then you will see like the whitish part. So this whitish part is called light organ. Usually there is a very simple way to say it. Then let's look at the life cycle. Okay, so the life cycle of this firefly is you have adults here. So I'm talking about this life cycle of our Southeast Asia special, which is Troptics. So we have these Troptics fireflies here, and the life cycle is always about with a metamorphosis that we call it a complete life cycle. Start with the adult. We have egg, the adults lay eggs, and then I think there's there's an auto. Oh. Oops. Okay, I think, let me go back to here. Yep, I think there's an auto replay. And this is after they lay eggs, there will be larva. And then you can see larva also glow, and pupa also glows, and adults also glow. So technically, in general, actually, all firefly larva actually glows in every species, but not all adults actually. When they become adult, they emerge as adults. Not all adult firefly actually can glow. So that is one fact that we would like to also sometimes emphasize to a lot of people. So there is the question that people keep asking: how do you identify male from female or firefly? So the simplest thing I can say is that, but the more you know about the species, the more complicated it can get. Okay, but the basic thing is always about the female has this one line set. When you see it glow, it's light up. You see, and you flip the body, and you see on the side of the larva that you see the adult, you will see the male and female, and then how the male actually have two segments that actually light up, the light organ. And you can see here is there are also neotenic female. That's what we call neotenic female. The female of this species cannot actually they emerge as adult, but in a larvae form. So they did not undergo the complete form of adults like you see the other beetles. But somehow, due to the evolutionary process, they become like they only come out as a larvae form, or only some part of the adult form. Okay, so this is the trickiest part. As you can see also from this diagram, like they are all glows and different kind of body, different kind of form. Okay, so one thing about us, like we all do as a taxonomist, is actually how a light organ, we want to emphasize here, light organ shape is very important, but it's a basic thing. It's not just that. So taxonomy is important in such a way that you actually need time to actually go through different kind of morphological characters, right? So you have to look. This is just look at the light organ. That's not just, it's just a start for us. But then you have to dissect the spot. When I say dissection, this is actually the example here is actually just about less than 1 centimeter of a specimen. So imagine you have to look at the part of the whitish part, then you have to dissect it. Then you have to take out the what we call it reproductive system, or in this case is genitalia. So where we actually want to see whether there are distinct species or not, because that is one of the most diagnostic character, important character in determining species. And usually we use male in this case. So as you can see, they may look quite similar, but then when you start dissecting the important parts of this firefly, then you start looking at different kind of wonderful look, shape of firefly and different species. As you can see already on the left side, and then on your right side, it's totally two different species, and that's how we tell. But this is only one part of the process of description. Okay, so how many species of fireflies in the world? There are more than 2,000 species in the world. More than 2,000 species. Singapore has more than 10 species. Malaysia has more than 60 species so far. When I say so far, which means that we actually don't finish yet in terms of species discovery. So these are all just to show you, the wonderful things of how they are, again, the life, different kind of shape, different kind of even color of the firefly, like how they produce the lights. Okay, in Southeast Asia, especially in the region, what we call it, what Leslie and I call it Asia and the Australo-Pacific region, Australia and the Pacific Islands, where we actually concentrate mostly on this subfamily. So within this family of Lampreyridae, that's what firefly is called, Lampreyridae. We have also subfamily Luciola, which have like 300 species combined. So you can see that there are, there can be found in a lot in other parts of the world, except Antarctica, and a different kind of habitat. You can see in the wetlands like mangrove, freshwater swamp, and also some kind of forest like Dipterocarp forest and so on. So this is what most when we say Luciola, family Luciola, actually all adults actually can produce lights. Okay, so how do they produce the light? So that is one thing that people keep asking about it, and it's something to do with all these luciferase, and then with the help of adenosine triphosphate, all this chemical reaction in the body of that happen in what we call it photosite, and that is when you put a microscope. That is where all this when this reaction combine together, then it produce light. Okay. So of course, you have to remember in the presence of oxygen. Okay, so why do they light up? One, don't try to eat me. I'm not tasty. So that is what we call it. We say that that's the reason why they light up. So it's also to communicate. So are you from my species or not? So then the most important part is the signal or the light, the way they communicate is actually for firefly mating behavior. So they just want to make love, and then they will just want to know each other, and that is how. And then there is actually part of reproducing system. Okay, right. So we know the stories. We know all the basic facts. We covered already. Why do they glow? How do they glow? What actually the life cycle is all about. And now I think I should give you some stories about fireflies. Some stories about how they actually, how we can use some of the stories to actually, what I would like to say here is I always use firefly as a subject of like a organism, like a study organism for me. I use fireflies as part of me to learn about natural heritage, about heritage of my country, a heritage from, about biodiversity heritage in our region. I also use fireflies to actually learn more about speciation, about species diversity in the world. And I use also fireflies to actually learn more about what should we do next to protect our biodiversity. So in terms of conservation. But this is what I just went, like last night, we actually went for a walk, what you call it, firefly walk in Kuala Lumpur in the public park called Bukit Kiara. And there's a famous Lampigera. So when we talk about Lampigera, it's actually larva is huge. So if I say to you, it's actually the normal size of firefly larva would be like 1 centimeter. This one it can go up to 7 centimeters. So it's really really huge, and you can see that night when you walk in the forest, along the forest, you can see them like this green glow along when you walk along the forest path, and then it's really really interesting. There's something about it. It's very conspicuous, yet there's no name. So it's like we don't know what's the name of this species. Why is it so hard to actually identify them? Put them, towards to some extent that why is it so sometimes people ask like why it is so important to have a name? Yes, because when you see this, you just like well, I don't know much about this one. So should I proceed or should I not? So sometimes start with something that because you want to know about the species better. So in this case, Lampigera is a mysterious because we don't know, and there's one issue here is that no species ever described from Peninsula Malaysia. So we don't have a record that says that Lampigera has been described, recorded from Peninsula Malaysia. The closest one is Sarawak, Sumatra, Yunnan, and Myanmar. So we have about over 10 species of Lampigera in this region. But then because no revision for oriented species in the last 100 years ago, so there are no species at all, no revision. We don't know much about it. And one of the reasons is because actually we depend mostly on the male taxonomy, the description of species based on male. The problem right now is the one that you see right now in front of you is the male. That is very hard to spot. It only fly at a certain time. So we were lucky last night because we finally know that there's a close window, there are very short windows that they actually fly, the male. So the male will only come out right after about 10 minutes, right after sunset. So you cannot follow when you do the survey sampling, you cannot follow your time or like human sampling time. So you always have to follow the sunset time. Like last night, the sunset here is 6:55. So we already get ready like 6:40 before that, get ready to see them. And it's actually just 10 minutes after sunset, we see we start seeing the male of Lampigera flying around looking for the female. And The problem also is the female is sexual dimorphism. That's what we say. It's totally different form. And what you see is the round shape is actually spherical shape, is actually the eggs laid by the female, and that is the male. So look at the size, look at the form, and that is how. So how would this male want to look for the female? So the female has to produce the really bright light. And trust me, if you are even in KL, that you know the light pollution is really bad. But when you're in the forest, you can see this like dark night, and you will see this bright glow. And the female has only some part of adult form, like you see the pronotum shape. So the larva, so it's very hard to spot them, because the female usually try to camouflage and try to try to hide themselves, like try to really not to be seen by predator, for example, or by other things. So the light that produced must be very specific, species specific. That is also one thing about when they say, like, are you from my species? Are we the same species or not? Based on the specific light pattern. So in this case of Lamprigera, the light actually, if you can see two dots here at the end of the abdomen of the Lamprigera male, the body is actually exposed. So you can see the abdomen exposed, and they can see the light. So then they will try to fly around and look for the female. It's really hard to also, and they only have some reason we don't know yet why they have this very short window. Probably something to do, and they have a really short antenna. So this is something interesting about me as a scientist, to actually find out how the morphological characters actually could give us some kind of clues how they actually survive in this modern world, anthropogenic, with all the human activities around development around it. They can survive in KL. In Singapore, you can still see fireflies, a few species of fireflies in Singapore. So there's something about survival, how they survive in this world, and then and also a very interesting form of life form, and we don't know yet. Maybe we do know that they actually eat. The larvae are carnivorous, so they eat a lot of things like snails. So something like totally different from what they are, or they don't actually eat each other. Or in this case, it's not something like they are not even the larva is not even vegetarian in this case. So a lot of the interesting thing that we don't know. So because in the past we couldn't find male, it's very hard to find the male specimen. That's the reason why people couldn't really identify the species to species level. So no revision. We don't know whether this one in Bukit Kiara, Kuala Lumpur is actually a new species or is already existing species. So the only way is actually, or one way to start, a good start is actually to look for the type specimen. And most of the type specimens of Lamprigera or all firefly species actually in Europe, including Leiden. And this one is actually including Leiden is because I have found one or two for Lamprigera in Leiden museum, which is now called Naturalis. So one good thing also, another thing interesting about Lamprigera here is that you will see in the collection there are a lot of larvae. So larva collection is because larva is easy to spot. You can find, you go to the forest, you will see larva everywhere, and not the adults. So the adult female is really hard to spot. I only see once. And then now that we know already timing for the adult male, now that we feel like, okay, now we have that, and we can start describing and look at the type specimen. So let's go back to what is, maybe just revisit what we mean by type specimen. So it's important here. So what we call it the name bearer. So it's not, we cannot simply name. It's not like we name the species, the firefly, like we name our cat, our pet, It's not just a nickname. The name actually tied to the specimen that we describe. So in this case, that's why it's called name bearer. So we do need, if you found a new species, let's say you just find a new species, this is a specimen, and the specimen that you describe as a new species, it should be the one that you preserve so that in future, someone can actually look at it. So this is why sometimes people are asking why taxonomy is, why the thing is so long to describe new species, because you need to know where this original specimen. So for example, I give you example, this Pyrocelia stramina Olivier. So the one that I found is this is the first. So Pyrocelia stramina was described based on this specimen. So this is the one that we are looking for, the type specimen, what we call unmarked. So sometimes when you already know that, you mark it and you call it type. But sometimes you don't know because nobody studied it and it's already probably in the one of the collection, so you don't see it much. And then you just say, oh, yeah, and then finally you go through the museum, then you saw this one. So for fireflies, many important specimens actually in Europe, but mostly in the museum, Maison Nationale d'Histoire Naturelle in Paris. And then it's owing to the work by two prolific taxonomists, Ernest Olivier and Maurice Pitt. So these two, because these two describe a lot of fireflies from our region, so you will see a lot of specimen, which is the original one, preserved in European museums. So that's why my work actually tied to the natural history. And always people ask me, why you keep traveling to Europe? And one of the reasons is to come back and to actually obtain the information. And as you can see on your left, it should be some kind of description. This is how we link back the type specimen and the description together, so that we know, this is the one that he mentioned. This is the description, and this is the specimen. This is the one that we need to look for when it's come to the name. So it's not just a name, it's actually the name bearer. Okay, so linked to that, this lead to why I'm talking about type specimen, because I'm talking about this one called, the special one called Troctis burni Olivier 1909. Why it's important? Because burni is the one, probably perhaps the only one luminous firefly species described from Singapore, 1909. And if you look at the scientific name, the way we name convention, usually when you have I at the back, burni is actually the species name after a guy, a male. So it's a name after Bjorn. In I think that's how they call it, Bjorn, BNI Olivier 1909. But the problem is we couldn't find. And one day there's, when you do assessment, whether you want to know whether Troctis burni still exists in Singapore or not, because the fact is you can find Troctis burni in Johor, in Terengganu, in Sarawak, but you couldn't find whether they are all still in Singapore or not. That is when we do the assessment, and then we realized that we couldn't find any. So whether they actually were described from Singapore, you have to go back to Paris Museum. So this is Paris Museum. I went to Paris Museum in 2019. You look at it, it's a bookshelf. It looks like a bookshelf, but it's actually not bookshelf. And you will see it's actually a collection of specimens. 100 over, sometimes it's arranged in systematic order, sometimes by author, by famous author, a famous collection like Arthur Russell Wallace, or in this case, collection of Obertua, and also sometimes very few particular geographic areas. So that makes it difficult if you want to look for Troctis burni from Singapore. So look at this. When you open your so-called book, you will see this one, and you open it and you see a bunch of, but not always. But this is the most cases. The most cases is actually, they're just like this. So you open it and you will see they are just messy, because there are millions of them in collection. Nobody can have time to do inventory for that. So you as expert, you have to know, and you have to look one by one. But this is a clue. As you see, Maurice Pitt, that there's a time here. And not just that, sometimes it's really, really hard because you don't want to break any of these specimens. And sometimes you are lucky. They already point you with the label of Singapore, but there's no other label accompanying it. So in this case of Troctis burni, what actually helped me is I found the specimen. After 3 hours I was in the collection, I found the specimen that actually give you some clue. It says collection of Comtesse de Dubian, and then it's something to do with Nirvana, and it says Singapore, and then it actually has the date of collection. So this one is actually courtesy of Dr. Leslie Valentine. Actually, Dr. Leslie Valentine actually photographed all these labels. So you have to remove it one by one. This is what is called type. And then that is when we certain that it was collected in Singapore. Is it mislabeled? Or is it like we are talking about Singapore or not? Whether it's Malaysia or Malaya at the time, or whether it was something, it was a mistake. So this is something like history of natural history, where we actually found that Nirvana, that's the yacht, actually was spotted in Singapore. So that was in 1903. And we now know what is was actually content, not count, in it's not a guy, it's actually a Comtesse Dubian. So this is Comtesse Dubian. If you look at the photo Wikimedia, we managed to actually link back to this wealthy woman at the time who actually sponsored expedition to Far East using a yacht called Nirvana. So if you're interested to know about more about this story, it's actually you can find out from our book. It's called from that we actually collaborate with the embassy of French embassy in Singapore, together with Natural History Museum Paris. And this is how we actually tell specimen story, not just about the species itself, but it's actually how it actually end up in Paris and so on. So this is something interesting about finding about the journey, about the history of your place where you are now. Okay, and the one thing about Stratys benign, unfortunately, we can confirm now after 10 years of surveys, we could not anymore find Stratys benign in Singapore. So Stratys benign is part of synchronous firefly, not like this. This one that you are seeing now is actually Babida and Malacca in Thailand. But what I'm trying to show you is Stratys benign, as you can see if I point here, you can see there are actually species here that belong to tropics, and they actually together, they are synchronous firefly. So that leads to when we actually were trying to find about benign, we end up looking at the Luciola singapura. We discovered, not by accident, actually, we can say by accident, we actually collect, the team from NParks actually collected a lot of specimen, and that's when we encounter unidentified specimen and name it Luciola, and finally described last year as Luciola singapura, requested by my colleagues at the time to name after the country, Singapore. So together with my taxonomy, my mentor, the Les Valentine, we described this called Singapore firefly, and we also call it in Malay name, Kunang-kunang singapura. So people always keep asking me about how do you know this is undescribed species or not? So I always, this is my annotation, my sketch. And I say, this is what I say is, when you have the undescribed species or you don't know, step one, ask yourself this question. Are you a taxonomist? No. If no, then consult a professional taxonomist. And some people told me, aren't we all taxonomists? Because we classify things, this is chair, this is my t-shirt, together, this is a pants, this is the book. But so we classify, we as a human, we always classify things. But we are talking about classification in terms of natural, biological, natural classification. So if you are taxonomist, yes, cool. Now move on to the next step. Step 2 is find diagnostic character. Can you find, look at this one. If you know the genus, the Luciola, to genus Luciola, you have to look at all Luciola, whether they are, especially in your region. Then you find that something diagnostic character, something's really outstanding character. So in this case, you see Luciola singapura has a really nice band of color. If you see under microscope, yeah, this is tiny, 4 millimeter. So you only can see under microscope. So whether it's confirmed to new species, to size, and then you look at all Luciola in the list, on your list, and then you say, oh, okay, no, actually similar to Luciola tiomana, for example. And they say, it's all right, it's okay, it's still important. Then you can say that it's a first record of the species in Singapore. But if you say, yeah, well, you couldn't find, and it's out to be like different species, then yes, you go to the step 3, name your new species. This is the most exciting part that I can say. But before that, you need to follow the code that what we call. We have this so-called code that you need to follow, International Nomenclature of International Commission of Zoological Nomenclature, ICZN. So you have to follow that. There are other rules that you need to follow, whether this is valid name or not, and so on. So finally, you publish, and then your peer reviewers will accept the, there will be come back and forth on the comments and everything. And then, of course, in terms of diagnostic character, you also need to provide some additional information about ecology, about molecular data, because you want it to be sure that this is distinct species. So yes, I did not know it attracts so much attention. So I was given 24 hours to talk on the DNA. So this is something that I would like to share with all of you.
Juan, maybe can you start it over with the audio?
Sorry?
The audio, maybe start it over with the audio.
Oh, so it's not, you cannot hear it, is it?
I cannot hear it. Tim, can you hear it?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think it's because my audio is oh. Can you hear it now? No?
I can hear you. I can't hear the.
Oh, okay. I think it's because I'm using the, okay, let me I think it's because I'm using the airport.
Oh, somebody is saying that you have to reshare the presentation with audio. Maybe try doing that. Look at the share screen and see if there's an audio, a sharing of audio function.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can't.
Let me get.
Just managed to distinguish
yes.
other species.
Okay.
This comes
Yeah.
more than a century after the last
Maybe
time.
start it over though, Juan.
Okay, maybe I will start
Researchers
again.
from Lee
Okay.
Natural History Museum have just identified a new firefly species. What you're looking at in a second is a specimen of the new species. They've named it Luciola singapura, or the Singapore firefly. Specimens of this species were first collected decades ago back from Nee swamp forest, the last remaining freshwater swamp forest in Singapore, and more recently in 2019 in that same area. However, researchers have only just managed to distinguish it from other species.
So what I'm trying to say here is that while we thought that we actually found specimen during our expedition, but there were already specimens in the museum collected in 1989. So it was nameless for 30 years. So that was something that I think is important to stress, to highlight here. Because if you don't start looking at it, if you don't start naming it, people don't give attention to it anymore. And people don't even know they exist. So now that you know that they exist, people will start looking at it. And now NPAC also, together with the other conservation groups, now looking at how to conserve them. Now that we know they are here, they are in the Nee swamp forest, they are in the endemic area, region here. So this is the beauty things about discovery. Of course, you will see all kind of response on Twitter, the thing about, you would not believe our eyes, and they put hats on it, on the mothership. And and then even I have received a lot of comments about how they look like a cockroach, So it's but it's something also to actually, make people aware of this,
Researchers from
Lee So this one next. Then what actually we did not aware is we didn't know it was just, we thought that it was just a scientific discovery, but it was little did we know actually it was also it's also inspired a composer based in New York. She actually Singaporean young composer who actually, she said that it was part of her National Day concert. So we actually got to interview her, like what actually, she actually called the name her piece because she got inspired by this discovery and call it Luciola singapura for her masterpiece, musical masterpiece, and what we call it this one. And she said that it's because this phenomenon is a beacon of hope and reaching our national and natural heritage. So when we say that, what is it about firefly that struck you? So she said, I want it to be a timely reminder for the preservation of endangered species and core habitats in the face of ceaseless modernization and climate change. It's beautiful. And this song, piece actually won several awards already. So I think maybe I would just play a bit. You can play more about on YouTube later. So changing Jusoh Singapura.
I think the audio again, Juan.
Also off, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I probably yeah, I'm not quite sure. I can hear here. Okay, so people cannot hear the sound, is it?
Yeah, we cannot hear it.
Oh, all right. Probably after this, I will play again. After the talk on, maybe just show the YouTube directly instead of put in the slide. And
Okay.
all right. So this is one of the of how is actually Luciola singapura actually also. Luciola singapura, when you Google about Luciola singapura, it's not just a species, it's also a symphony piece by Coach Chen. I think she got more popular than the species, but yeah, it's nice to actually, when you read read up about this symphony, the music is actually telling about the story about the species. And sorry, and then I think I will just touch a bit on the major threats here. So since we have about, yeah, I will just finish in 2 minutes about these threats. And the major threats that we face right now is the light pollution. So this is the one that we are now trying to focus on, artificial light at night that was called Ellen. And also, of course, destruction of forests everywhere. Then this is major threats, not just to fireflies, but mostly to other biodiversity in the world. And how to help? This is very simple thing. You don't need to be expert, but I think there's the best way is always like to make sure that you don't waste your time, waste your energy, the light energy, and turn off the lights when you don't use it. Report firefly sighting. If you see now, you go out and then you say, hey, I saw fireflies, and you know what to do. You just report to the people that you know, and parks, for example, in Singapore, and for Malaysia, we have many NGOs that are working in biodiversity. And of course, I think be proactive. And you can be proactive in terms of, just join the activity that involve fireflies. And also, when you see firefly, you just have to respect the firefly's presence, not to kill them unless you are doing it for the sake of research. So we do have these two that already mentioned by Anthony in the beginning. I'm a co-chair for IUCN SSC Firefly Specialist Group, together with Prof. Sarah Lewis from Tufts University in the US. I'm also part of the steering committee for Fireflies International Network. You can find us on Facebook. This is a group for everyone, but the IUCN is mostly for specialist group. But we both are actually, these two organizations actually work towards protection of fireflies. And that's all about it. I would like to thank again, especially my former employer, Lee Kuan Yew Natural History Museum, for the opportunity for me to work on fireflies in Singapore, and the NUS Libraries for the opportunity to talk and share my passion about fireflies with all of you. And I reuse all the slides mostly from the video from the my last time was from Jolene and AJ when we did actually this one for World Firefly Day. That's all. Thank you.
All right, lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Juan. That was a wonderful sort of tour, both into your passion, but also into the world of fireflies, and so rich as well. Let's open it up to questions. We've got about, I think, 15 minutes. So if you have a question, you could turn on your screen and you can ask it, or you can maybe share it in the chat box. And Juan, I think, is open to taking kind of any questions related to the talk today. So please be sure to just maybe identify yourself institution-wise, for example. And yeah, while people are thinking about their questions, because there was a lot of really rich information there, I've got one that I think I'm just curious about, and this really draws on just stories in your experience. So the Luciola singapura was collected, and it was held in a collection for 30 years and then described. And that's amazing. I wonder if you could just share, is there another story like that? Is this a common thing?
It is common thing, actually. So people like to say that, how important is natural history collection. So people say that, museum is not relevant anymore, collecting is not anymore relevant. But when we are facing now like climate change and everything, this is actually important. Is give you the past like information about how actually they were here. I always say that you cannot protect the species like current species or future species if you don't know the past. So you don't know the past, how do you tell this species as extinct without the baseline information? How do you say that this species is declining if you don't even have the baseline information about when they were here, or how was the condition in the past, or if you have any evidence of specimen that collected from the past. So natural history collection is important in such a way that it's actually give you some kind of archival, right? It gives you some information like a time machine. So it's like you go back, you don't have to go back to the 1989, but I already know. And when I look at the collector, Prof. Peter Ng, then I would just like ask him, and then he's just like, yeah, I actually was there. Then that was the story was like, exact same description. When he described the place, I'm like, wow, okay, that actually the same area where I went to. So it was kind of amazing that and also it confirmed that the species only stay there. So never actually leave the area. So it's something to do, then its future work should actually concentrate on that particular site. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it has been actually. This is not irregular or encounter. So it always like not just firefly, but there are many other collections, insects or other animals.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and lovely that the way you illustrate that, you know, the past is constantly in dialogue with the present.
Yeah.
And so the other layer there is, I didn't realize that Prof. Peter Ng was the one who collected the first, the 1999.
So how do we know beautiful. The label is important? So every time, this is something like people find it tedious, but I find it really, really important because you need to jot down information that you have. Stick to that specimen and you see the labels. That is label how we know about Comptes du Beyond. Until today, people thought it's also actually male, someone by the name Beyond, but it's actually a male, a female. It's a wealthy. Then you start, oh, that's how the story. They came here in Colette during the expedition. So that's the beauty things about the stories behind the specimen that I like a lot. It's also tell us of the importance of keeping notes, because nowadays we have all handphones and everyone, I find it quite how to say, yeah, we are losing that talent, that skills, like jot down the information notes. Yeah.
Wow, that's lovely. Let's get a few more questions in here too. We've got one from okay, Boon Hua Tan. How about you, sir?
Hi.
And then we've got two in the chat box after.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes. Boon from KL. I'm from
Hi,
Friends
Boon.
of Bukit Kiara. Hi. Yeah, so the Lamprigera picture scene was actually taken where we are. I got a question with regards to you mentioning about the threat of light pollution, right? So we've been hearing on the streets on anecdotes that LED light, because of the bandwidth in which a light is emitted, is more harmful, or rather the firefly is more sensitive to the modern LED light than say old sodium lights or light emitted from other means of mechanism. Is that true? Is there a relationship there?
I think we actually starting a study on how the exposure of lights actually impact the firefly. So in this case, it's very hard. There's no such like a rule of thumb that you can just say that this part, this LED, but it's more on the wavelength of the spectrum of lights that actually affect the different species, different kind of wavelength or spectrum that they can actually what do you call it, tolerate. Right. So in this case, it's I cannot say for that Lamprigera, because I think some Lamprigera tolerate to certain lights. But if you look at the other species, even a tiny amount of light, they will turn off their lights, and they won't be able to actually talk to each other anymore because they feel like, oh, this is so scary. There's other big light coming to us. So shine on us. So that is something that we would like to investigate in future, whether the LED effect or not. But that one is actually different species, and I cannot tell you now until we start, working on the hypothesis, working on the experiments for that.
Wonderful. Thanks for the question, Mr. Boon, and thanks for elaborating on that kind of not just the importance of the light pollution, but just kind of the different kinds of light.
Yes,
that sounds like a fascinating kind of direction for the research. We've got two questions in the chat box, and I'll kind of go through those quickly for you, Juan. Okay. The first is from Hong Mi, and Hong Mi says there's 8 species of fireflies in Korea, and Hong Mi is wondering, do we know how many species are still around in Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia, I
yeah.
think I point just now I flashed the one in Lucioline, just family Lucioline, we have 300, over 300 species. And I see many more because so far, actually, our work based on museum specimens, believe it or not. So more and more people study fireflies now. We got headache. You can ask Dr. Leslie Valentine. We got headache because we get more and more samples that we are just like, hey, we haven't seen this one yet, you know? So we are still working on the undescribed species from the museum specimen. So imagine that. And now that we have the one like collection from like 300 species all over, and I mean, to answer the question, it should be more than that. Like we predict it should be more than that. Yeah. Because we're talking about just one subfamily. We're not talking about the entire family of Lampridae yet, the firefly. Yeah.
Right. So just for those of us who don't know, like myself, I don't know. One family is the Luciola.
No, that's not family. That's a genus. So there's another group of species. Yeah.
Okay.
So a family is more like all genera all grouped together. So you have like one big family, that big group that combine all other types of fireflies.
Yeah.
So in this case, all that looks like, you know, in general, beetles that produce light, that is called Lampridae. So that's a family. Then you go into the specific genus, is a group of species. So group of species that share similar characteristics, similar common ancestor in this case. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. So more than 300 plus, and probably many, many more as
already many more. And hopefully we discover before it's too late.
Yes, indeed. Hopefully within the next 30 years, because, you know, it seems like a lot can change. The other quick question is from, looks like May Masnora. And this May is interested in opportunities for the public to maybe join these night walks and these night excursions, to join in field research, to join in observations. Are there opportunities that you know of, maybe in Malaysia, but also in Singapore?
Okay, we don't have a formal event, but I will use example like Friends of Bukit Kiara, like Mr. Boone just mentioned. So they do have this kind of so-called program called Citizen Science. So they do the monitoring very good. They have been compiling data for 1 year already, especially for the Lamprigera. So this is a good way. If I were to describe Lamprigera in future, so I already have this data that actually good for me. So there's one that you have to reach out to group that actually actively working on fireflies. Well, I think in Australia, for example, Leslie Valentine has set up a group, Australian group, who actually, you know, if they have sighting, they can actually reach out to them, and usually on Facebook. If you don't know how to reach out, you actually can go to Fireflies International Network, where you can actually connect with all over. I think we have more than 2,000 participants already for the FIN. So Fireflies, we call ourselves, who actually chase for fireflies, love fireflies, like fireflies, to study fireflies. And that is one way to start. Reach out to, you know, NGO that actually work on it, from Malaysian Nature Society, from for NPARK, usually for now, I know it's more on research, not yet on citizen science. Yeah.
What about NSS here? Do they have like a group that deals with fireflies, the Nature Society of Singapore?
In Singapore, actually, for now, it's more on the, as far as I'm concerned, so based on like previous, like, I don't know what happened in three months, for the last 3 months, so probably already changed something. But as far as I'm concerned, so far it's research-based, so mostly conducted by, so NPARK has its own group, research actually specifically dedicated to work on conservation and monitoring of fireflies. That one is actually, so the best way is actually to reach out to NPARK in this case. Yeah.
Great. We've got one other question in the chat box from Kelvin Wong. And Kelvin's asking where in Malaysia would be some good places to see fireflies?
Depends on what kind of fireflies you want. So if you want something like experience, especially with in this case, like somewhere not so adventurous, like, you know, you don't need to take a boat or what, but usually I would advise always go with the one that already established tourism area. So in this case, we have Kuala Selangor for the firefly, synchronous flashing fireflies for the mangrove. But for the Bukit Kiara, for example, it's actually quite safe, but in this case, I think it's not public, not publicly open unless there is a call for events. So reach out. You have to just, like, you know, watch out for any announcement in Malaysia. But most Malaysian tourism, any mangrove spot, I think you can easily find. Kuala Selangor is the best so far because it has established safety and rules and everything regarding to tourism practice and so on. So yeah.
Right. Which is really important also for the fireflies themselves, I guess, and
Yes.
kind of keeping them front and center in terms of protection.
Yeah.
Great, great. Thanks, Juan. Let's see. No more questions in the chat box. We've got one here. Maggie, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm from Monash University, Malaysia. So I
Hi.
always wonder, do the fireflies have functional role in the ecosystem?
Great question, Maggie.
Great question. Okay, we always say that it's actually ecological indicator. But there is also looking at their ecosystem, right? Okay, look at the life cycle. I'll give you a very simple example. They actually don't stand alone as just one group of species or one group of family lampridae. But when you look at what they actually eat, they eat snails in this case. So in order for you to protect firefly, actually you cannot just protect the adults. Like example, you see the fireflies in mangrove, thousands of them are trees, and then you say just protect the trees. No, it cannot work that. So it's actually ecosystem approach is better. So in this case, it's actually using fireflies because people love firefly, people want to see fireflies, and it's also a tourism benefit to human, in this case in economic sector. It's actually by using ecosystem approach. When I say ecosystem approach is you cannot just protect just adults, but you have to also think about the larvae who eat actually that eat firefly, that eat snails, and then in this case, you know, you have to also look for what actually the snails prey on. So in this case, is so this is how we look at it things differently. You cannot just look at just adult that flesh that actually produce life, but the entire life cycle. Yeah.
Almost like the whole panda concept. Conserving the panda to conserve their ecosystem as well.
Yeah, so they're very intricate, but there's also intricate relationship that you have to look at. That, for example, they're very soft-bodied beetle, so they cannot actually live on the very dry. So in terms of you're talking about climate change, temperature is very important. Really high temperature, you won't really dry season. It's not easy to spot fireflies. So that is one thing to also look at. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Juan. We've got another quick question in the chat box, and then maybe if there's others on the screen. In the chat box, we've got Gabriel, who is asking about why do different fireflies have different light patterns?
Yeah, so it backs to because of the specific so they have to, so this goes back to the why do they glow? So why do they glow is there to deter predator, and there's also
I think we lost your audio there.
the most important part is actually they are species specific when it comes to mating. So when you do in this case, when you say about mating, that is actually unique. We say that unique firefly has unique kind of how they actually identify themselves. So I have this kind of pattern, dots for this species. So I would say that if you happen to be in an area, fireflies habitat area, you see that fireflies A, firefly B, they won't communicate with, they have different kind of color, different kind of pattern, like rhythm, like playing, or whether they are continuous flow, whether they're green or they are actually yellowish or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, wonderful. Let's see. Thanks, Juan. Do we have one more question? It looks like Ade Kurniawan wants to build on Gabriel's question about sort of the light patterns and the differences. And Ade is asking, have there been any experiments to replicate the light producing ability in a lab setting? So anything like that where folks like yourself and others would take these fireflies and maybe kind of replicate or reproduce that lighting in a lab setting?
We are going towards that. So one of the project that we are working on is actually, or we are still waiting whether we can get any money for this project, is to see the impact of artificial lighting. So that's together with actually Eunice and Sebastian. So we are actually working on the proposal to see the impact of light pollution on nocturnal insect, including fireflies. So this is where it's going to involve some kind of work in laboratory where we actually expose them to some kind of wavelength or different kind of light spectrum. So we want to see whether how which range they can tolerate, which range of lights they can actually tolerate. So this is going to be a lab more on the lab setting.
That's wonderful. Oh, that sounds excellent. And it ropes in Eunice Tan and Sebastian Pohl. both from Yale and US.
Chemical process.
I think this is Ada. Yeah, he's asking about the chemical process that needs to.
Oh, okay. For now, at least not in my lab. So in terms of chemical process, I think some people biochemists might be interested to actually work on it. But so far, as far as I have not going towards that yet. Yeah.
Great. Oh, we've got Prof. Leslie has a picture here that she's sharing.
You would like to, yeah, Silence Park. Yeah, okay. You're promoting Sarah Louise' book. Yeah, if you want to find out more about interesting facts about fireflies, all the stories. Actually, there's a book by Sarah Louise. It's called Silence Sparks. Thank you, Leslie.
That's great.
Yeah, that's actually really, really interesting to start with. We do have several, I think there's also other author actually working on the fireflies mostly in North America. Yeah, we are still waiting for Leslie's book then.
Wonderful. Let's see, do we have maybe one last question from the audience, if there is one? And as people probably prepare for that last one, I want to just say about that ecosystem question that Maggie raised. Yeah. So I didn't know that fireflies eat snails. So when we see these kind of swarm of flies, are we then to assume that kind of there's an abundance of tree snails? Is there, or no?
No, okay. Not necessarily. But we do know some species actually have this kind of a group predatory attack. So, but it's only observed in the lab. Like they actually attack the same snail in a group. But whether or not it's in natural setting, they actually do that. We're not sure. Also, because it's really, really hard to observe them actually feeding in the natural habitats. It's really hard. By chance, you might see them, then that's when you know they actually eat this type of snails. But of course, we do have any other way also to find out by analyzing the gut of the larva and amplifying the predator in the guts and see what they actually eat. So that kind of thing also help. But yes, so whether something I think. Good fact is actually to remember also most of the firefly life cycle is actually mostly spent during larva stage. So they eat a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Didn't Sean Cheng do some of that work on trying to determine what the adults or larvae were eating by doing some DNA on the gut contents?
Yeah, but I think I did not see yet the findings.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's
all right. Sorry.
Yeah, we have many people from different direction actually looking at different direction of research. Quite interesting to actually see the results. Yeah, from different people from different expertise.
Do we know what species of snail the Luciola singapura eats?
Oh, okay. So last time I was in Singapore, we went several times to Nee Soon, try to find out the larva. No, it's not easy, and in fact, not easy to get the adults. So it's not easy even. So I think it was our best move or strategy to actually describe them, because I think looking at how small the habitat is, and also we see a lot of ferns around it. So we kind of think that the food must be also specialist. So which means that the larva might eat something like special in snails, and the larva really, really tiny. Imagine the adults already 4 millimeter. So I think it's not easy for us to spot, especially in freshwater swarm. I'm not quite sure. Maybe they are not aquatic. Maybe they are just like around the area where they cannot swim, but probably they cannot swim. I think in this case, yeah.
Yeah. So the beginning of the story, but I mean, it sounds like there's so much more that we can learn about this really kind of important species that's in Singapore. Fabulous. Yeah. I think if it's okay, Juan, it's about 11 o'clock. So maybe if there's no last questions, I'm going to thank you again for your wonderful, rich talk today, and for sharing your time with us, and for really brightening up this kind of morning with all this wonderful firefly talk. So thank you again. Thank you, Tim, for the introduction and for running this series.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And thank you all to the audience for participating and joining in and asking your questions. I want to thank Prof. Leslie, Dr. Juan's mentor, for joining us as well. Yes, thank you all. And we look forward to seeing you guys, I think, next semester when we have a herpetologist join us, which is not related to fireflies, but within the same natural world of Singapore. So we're really excited by that. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Juan. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you all enjoy the talk.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dr. Wan. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.